Hey there. Tonight, I'll tell you 3 real paranormal stories that'll send chills down your spine. Close the doors, turn off the lights, and get ready. Things are about to get scary. Back then, I worked in the repair division on the main railway line between New York and Albany. Night shift. I was always a bit of a night owl. After 6 weeks on the job, I felt right at home. One night, just before midnight, in late April, we were assigned repairs near the station. I headed out right away. There was almost an hour before the next train, so I wasn't in a rush. The night was clear, warm. Clouds covered the moon, but my lantern lit the way. Suddenly, a cold wind swept down the tracks, a sharp whistle, like a storm approaching. It was so strong it nearly knocked me down. I stumbled, almost dropping my lantern, but caught myself. Shivering from the sudden chill, I turned around and saw it, a giant shadow, swallowing the tracks, the trees, the entire sky. My God, what is that? I gasped. I tried to run back to the station, but the darkness swallowed me before I could take more than a step or two. My lantern went out. Instantly, I froze. I could barely see a few feet ahead. And then, to my right, the rails began glowing. An eerie, blue light. My heart clenched in fear. Suddenly, train headlights pierced through the darkness. A white-blue light, cutting through the black mist. The train appeared, a massive locomotive draped in black cloth. It roared, spewing smoke and steam. Its brass and copper parts gleamed faintly in the eerie glow. It pulled several cars behind it. I looked into the windows. No one inside. Then, I heard it. Music, soft, distant, mournful. I turned and froze. In one of the cars sat an orchestra of skeletons. They played a slow funeral march on black, gleaming instruments. A skeleton violinist played with eerie passion. A lone drummer waited patiently for his cue, and a skeleton conductor led them with slow, deliberate motions. I could barely breathe from the terror. Then, another train approached, draped in the same black cloth. On its platform sat a single black-covered coffin. Around it, ghostly soldiers, wearing Union Army uniforms from the Civil War. They bowed slowly to the coffin. Some limped, others staggered under its weight. And suddenly, I understood. I was watching Abraham Lincoln's funeral train. I stood at attention and saluted. The train slowly rolled away into the night, taking with it the darkness, the chill, and the clouds. Suddenly, my lantern lit back up in my hand. I blinked, wiped away a tear, and walked back to the station. The next morning, every clock along the Hudson was 6 minutes behind. Every train left, exactly 6 minutes late. When I asked the station master, he just smiled and said, "Don't worry about it. Lincoln's train always delays time whenever it passes through at night." Death turned out to be neither an end nor a beginning. It was a cue. My heart stopped at 17:03 on a Tuesday. A clot, quietly, swiftly, without drama. I, Michael, a 45-year-old accountant, was simply sitting at my desk compiling a quarterly report when suddenly the world went dark. No tunnel, no light, no angels. There was a brief, snap-like nothingness, then awareness. I stood beside my desk and looked at myself, or rather, at my body. It was sitting in the chair, head tilted back, eyes half opened in surprise. I was not a ghost. I was not a soul. I was simply consciousness, a point of view. I felt neither cold nor warmth, but I was there. I tried to touch my shoulder, but my hand passed through. No panic, only cold, all-consuming bewilderment. Then colleagues rushed in and called an ambulance. Doctors arrived and declared death. I watched all this with detached curiosity, as if watching a movie about someone else. I saw my boss crying, the woman I hated. I saw my young colleague, whom I always envied, looking away in horror. I realized the first rule of this new state. I was tethered. I couldn't move further than 3 or 4 meters from my body. An invisible, unbreakable chain. When the paramedics loaded my body onto a stretcher, I was dragged behind them like a balloon on a string. My first home in the afterlife was the city morgue. A cold, echoing room smelling of formalin. Here I realized the second rule. I was not alone. In the hall, besides mine, lay 5 other bodies, and beside each hung a consciousness like mine. We couldn't see each other, but we felt, like weak, overlapping radio static. We were here in one room, a crowd of lonely souls tethered to their cooling shells. The most terrifying attraction of my life began, the autopsy. I was forced to watch as the pathologist, an elderly, tired man, methodically and routinely dismantled my body. I looked at my internal organs lying on a metal tray. I, who had feared the sight of blood in life, but I felt nothing. No horror, no disgust, only cold, detached observation. Emotions, I realized, remained in that dead heart he was now weighing on the scales. The next day, my wife Elena came. She recognized me. She cried. I stood beside her, invisible, bodiless, and desperately wanted to hug her. But I couldn't. I tried to shout, "Elena, I'm here. I'm not dead." But I had no voice. I was just consciousness, a spectator. The funeral was on the 3rd day. I lay in the coffin, in my best suit, looking up at the faces of people who came to say goodbye. I heard everything. The hypocritical speeches of my boss about what an irreplaceable employee I was. The whispering of colleagues about who would take my place now. The sincere, choking tears of Elena and our teenage son, Paul. Then the lid was closed. Darkness, the thud of earth falling on the coffin, and silence. I was trapped in a narrow wooden box 2 meters underground, chained to my rotten body. And I understood what hell was. Hell is not fire and cauldrons. Hell is time and complete, absolute inactivity. Days passed, weeks. I learned to talk to others, to those standing in the queue next to me. Old Mary from the neighboring grave, who died of old age. A nameless soldier who died in the 90s. A little girl hit by a car. Our conversation was not words. It was the exchange of pure thoughts, the essence of personality. We learned the rules of our existence. We were all standing in a queue. No one knew where it led or when it would move. We just waited. And while waiting, we had to endure the universe's most terrible process, the decay of our own bodies. I felt it. Not pain, but knowledge. I felt how corpse bacteria began their work, how worms crawled over my skin, my former skin. I sensed every stage of decomposition, from autolysis to skeletonization. I, an accountant who had dealt with numbers all my life, was now studying the biology of death firsthand. It was the most horrifying and most detailed scientific report. But the worst part was something else. I still heard, not with ears, but with some part of my consciousness still connected to the living world. I heard Elena coming to my grave, heard her crying, heard her telling me the news. Then I began to hear what was not meant for my ears. I heard her talking on the phone with her sister. She complained that I left her with too many debts. She was angry that I hadn't arranged insurance. I heard her 2 months after my death, laughing at another man's joke. My love, my Elena, continued to live, and that was normal. But I, trapped in my grave, perceived it as betrayal. I, stripped of all emotions, began to experience their phantom, ugly echoes: jealousy, resentment, anger. I understood why this queue existed. It didn't just delay us, it cleansed us. It stripped off all our humanity, all our love, all our attachments, leaving only the bare, tired essence ready for the next stage. The queue moved. Every few weeks, one of the old-timers suddenly fell silent. We felt their presence disappear. Cooled, we thought. That gave hope. It meant there was an exit. Half a year passed. Almost nothing remained of my body. The process was almost complete. I became calmer. I almost surrendered. I waited for my call, and I understood a terrible truth. It happened when they called the girl buried nearby. Her consciousness didn't just vanish. It collapsed. Like a radio turned off at the socket, I felt her last surge, not hope, but horror at final, absolute nothingness. No one called us. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. The queue moved because souls died, for real. Our consciousness, our personality, was tethered to our body, to our brain. And when the last brain cell rotted, turning to dust, the chain broke, and we simply ceased to exist. It was not a transition. It was erasure, annihilation. Here is the main deception, the main horror. They gave us hope, made us wait months for a transition to a better world. But in reality, we were just standing in line for total and final disposal. On the day I realized this, something changed inside me. Fear left, despair left. Only cold, clear emptiness remained, and one single thought: I could not change anything. I could not save myself or others, but I could meet my end in my own way. My ending is my choice. I stopped listening to the world of the living, stopped paying attention to my rotting shell. I focused on something else, on those near me, on those like me, condemned to erasure. I began to talk to them. I told them the truth. At first, they didn't believe me, accused me of blasphemy. But then they began to feel it themselves, to feel how their neighbors in the queue didn't leave but simply disappeared forever. And then I offered them my way. Since we are doomed to disappear, let's disappear not in fear and not in false hope. Let's disappear as humans. I ask each to remember not their life, not their grievances, but one single, brightest, happiest moment. A moment that was untouched by anything. Old Mary remembered how as a child her father gave her her first doll. The soldier remembered receiving a letter from his mother. The little girl remembered eating the most delicious ice cream in the park. I found mine too. A summer day, the cottage, Elena, little Paul and I flying a kite. And the kite soared, high, high up. And we laughed, all three of us. Simple, pure, absolute happiness. And we began sharing this. We created our own network, our own world woven from the best moments of our lives. We were no longer alone in our graves. We were together in this common, bright memory. I feel my connection to the body weakening, my thoughts slow. The process nears its end. Soon I will be called too, but I am not afraid. I know oblivion awaits me, but I will go into it not from a cold, rotting pit. I will go into it from that same summer day, from a sky full of sun, and with my son's laughter in my ears. This is not salvation, but it is dignity. And for those standing in line to nowhere, it is the only thing that matters. Life, it's a complicated story, full of unexpected surprises. Sometimes it throws such terrifying mysteries at you that first you're stunned, and then you can't shake off the fear for a long time. Of course, everyone has their own path, but along the way, we meet strangers. Some become part of your life, others are just passing by for a moment, and you never know what to expect from a stranger. Or what if they aren't even human? That's what happened to me once. That's when I learned what true fear feels like. Cold, mystical, paralyzing. It happened 13 years ago. On a dark road leading from our village to the main highway. It wasn't exactly the middle of nowhere, but far from the comforts of civilization. The villagers without cars had to walk about 3 kilometers along an old gravel road to the highway. There was a roadside cafe there, with a bus stop nearby. In spring and summer, you could take a shortcut through a ravine during daylight, but the rest of the year, especially at night, you had no choice but to take that gravel road, passing by the woods and the cemetery. Near the village, there were still a few streetlights here and there, but beyond that, nothing but complete darkness. There's one particular stretch of that road, from the village outskirts to a fork near the cemetery. Even now, I'm terrified of it. I feel overwhelming panic there. A deep, uncontrollable fear. I had walked that road many times before without issues. But one night, everything changed. It was a summer evening. I was walking home. Dusk was falling. A white mist crawled across the ground. I was in a good mood, quietly humming. Then suddenly, every cell in my body froze with dread. A chilling wave of terror washed over me from the woods. My heart began to pound like a trapped bird. My legs carried me forward on their own. As I ran, I felt a crushing presence right behind me, pushing me toward the village. I only came to my senses after I reached the edge of the houses. I never figured out what happened that night. But after that, I avoided walking there alone. Still, sometimes I had no choice. And every time, that suffocating fear returned. The strangest thing, that stretch of road looks ordinary. A dull gravel path, sparse trees on both sides. To the left, through the trees, you can see the village cemetery. Nothing special. During the day, I felt fine there. But in the evening, in fog or bad weather, especially at night, panic took over me completely. But that was just the beginning. Village life isn't romantic, it's harsh. No jobs, no money, and you need work history to retire someday. I was lucky to get a job with shifts, 1 day on, 3 days off. A few others from our village worked there too. A van picked us up early from the highway stop and brought us back after shifts. My schedule matched with a man everyone called the Silent One. A short, quiet, awkward fellow. Barely spoke a word, but I was still grateful for his company. It felt safer walking with someone. Our village had 4 streets. My house was at the very bottom. I always left early. The Silent One wouldn't wait. If you weren't there, he'd leave. That night, it was early November. Cold, rainy, pitch dark. The full moon barely glowed through thick clouds. Visibility, almost zero. I reached the street, ready to wait. And then I saw him ahead, standing under a street lamp. A man in a raincoat, facing away. I smiled. What a surprise. He's waiting for me. But the moment I stepped onto the gravel road, he started walking away. I didn't call out. I figured I'd catch up. but no matter how fast I walked, I couldn't close the distance. We passed the last streetlight, heading toward that dreadful cemetery fork. I was almost running. Then it hit me. Strange, he always carried a bright flashlight. But now, nothing. No light at all. And I couldn't hear his footsteps. Suddenly he slowed down near the crossroads. I was relieved and almost caught up, calling out, "Finally caught you. I've been chasing you since the village." He stopped, frozen in place, and then vanished. Just like that, I stood there stunned, looked around, no one. Open ground everywhere, nowhere to hide. And then it dawned on me. He was walking fast, no flashlight, and I heard nothing. But the real silent one walked slowly, always noisy. That wasn't him. Panic gripped me. I bolted. I ran like never before, all the way to the roadside cafe. I sat there shaking. The old cashier noticed me. "What happened to you? Look like you've seen a ghost." Or worse, I muttered. "Just cold." She brought me hot coffee. "Here, on the house. Life's full of strange things." 20 minutes later, the real silent one walked in. He spoke first, surprisingly. "Why didn't you wait for me? I was walking behind you. Then you suddenly sprinted ahead. Lost sight of you right away." He swore. I'd been walking alone the whole time. That night left a deep scar on my heart. I took time off, switched shifts, started walking with a woman instead. It felt safe again. I never told anyone about what happened, except my family. Why bother? People wouldn't believe me anyway. Now years later, I think, maybe whoever walked with me that night didn't want to scare me at all. Maybe they were simply walking me through the darkest part of my path.